Welcome to another discussion from Sound Approach. Today we have a special guest from our partners at WireWorld Cables to discuss our most popular selling cable brand. I'm happy to introduce Larry Smith, the National Sales Manager of WireWorld Cable. Welcome, Larry. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you here today. So let's get started and discuss WireWorld Cable. If I'm not mistaken, you have a background in music. Is that correct?
I do.
All right.
I do.
And outside of your role with WireWorld, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure.
And we can absolutely plug your music shamelessly.
Well, okay, terrific. I don't have anything really pluggable at the moment, but
Okay.
I got involved in pro audio. I had a friend when I was in high school that started a band, and he needed a sound person, and I had a decent stereo. I knew how to hook stuff up. He had gotten all this gear, really didn't even know how to hook it up. I went down, helped him hook it up, and became a sound person for a high school band.
Wow.
And so I've been doing sound mixing since around 78, 79. I had taken organ lessons as a teen, playing music that I didn't particularly care for. But when I went to college, I really wanted to play bass, and I met a very competent bass player who had moved to Tallahassee with his best friend who was a drummer, and they needed a sound person, and so I started running sound for them. When they hired their guitarist, I realized that's what I wanted to do. You know, I love bass, but I wanted to play guitar. So I started. I bought my first guitar in February 1980, and I've played guitar and bass and keys since then. Was in my first rock band in '83.
Wow.
And I'm still active. So
well, that's fantastic. And it seems like this was your introduction into the pro audio world.
Yeah, I mean, running sound for a band, well, for multiple bands at that point. The bands that I was in, I was always one of the techs. You know? I've always had very complicated rigs because I play guitar and keys. You know, so I had more stuff to deal with. And in 1987, I opened a punk rock club in Tallahassee.
Really?
It had been my band's warehouse, and our band, we would do gigs where we'd have, you know, friends come and play, and we got hooked up with SST Records, Greg Ginn from Black Flag, and so we had all these nationally touring acts that in between Atlanta or Nashville and Miami would want a place to stop, and so we'd have typically an SST band one show a week.
Yeah.
And I was the sound guy.
Wow.
So I got to
so at a professional level, not just as like an amateur, at a professional level.
Well, you know, it was a small, crappy little club, definitely a dive bar, but you know, we were providing an outlet and a service, and it was a ton of fun. I got to see phenomenal bands.
I'm sure.
And you know, so I did that. After that, I met my current wife in '91. She's a phenomenal singer. So I was running sound for her bands until we got in a band together in '98. And I've been playing with her since '98 in 3 different versions of bands.
Wow. Well, if you do have any music, please let me know, and we will put it in below.
Terrific.
There's
stuff out there.
I've heard some stuff. And it's good.
Right. Yeah.
It's good. A couple of years ago, I think you sent something out during Christmas.
So the most recent thing that I've been doing for over 10 years now, I got involved in. I was part of a guitar podcast, and they started doing 2 albums a year.
Okay.
And I learned to collaborate with people internationally, and 5 people that were members of this forum put together an online band. We're called Black Snake Halo. We haven't done anything for several years because the singer's been unavailable, but we recorded a 12-song CD. then a 4-song EP, and since then we've put out enough singles. We've got something like 26 or 28 songs recorded.
Wow. Wow. And
And
that's internationally. So everybody's.
I've got 2 guys in Wales, a guy in Germany, and a guy in Pennsylvania.
Wow.
And I'm located in Florida.
That's
and
awesome.
It's all done through, we share the same desktop audio workstation, the same DAW, and Dropbox.
Wow. Wow. So it can be done in a lot of different ways.
It can be done in a lot of different ways. And most of the pros do that these days.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. There's a whole lot of mixing and music going on. So how long have you been with WireWorld, and how would you describe your role as the national sales manager?
I've been with WireWorld for 12 and a half years.
Okay.
And my role as national sales manager is controlling the distribution, determining what outlets would be authorized to sell our products. I'm effectively a brand ambassador. I travel the country and tell people about the wonders of WireWorld.
All right. Well, what can you tell us about how WireWorld has changed and evolved over the time frame that you've been with the company?
Sure. The thing that I think differentiates WireWorld from a lot of our competitors is David Sauls, the founder of the company, is not only a brilliant designer, a mad scientist, as it were, but he's also a perfectionist, and he's compelled to always do something better, no matter what he does. As soon as he's finished with a product, he's trying to think about how it could be improved. And so, when I came to the company, we were selling Series 6 product.
Okay.
We transitioned to Series 7 in 2013 and Series 8 in 2018. And so I've seen this evolution of growth, both of, product categories expanding into Ethernet, for example, and the refinements within categories. And I know that David is uncommon in the industry because most businesses, when you come up with a successful product, the way that you make the most money is to sell that product
as long as you can. Yeah.
But David is always working on refinements, and we're always looking for the next great thing.
Yeah. And we actually sat down with David and we had a conversation with him. So if you want to hear that, please check wherever the box is for that video. How does your love of music translate into your role as the national sales manager?
I interface with end users, consumers, as well as dealers all the time. And I tell people I'm not a gifted audiophile. I'm not one of those guys that can hear super subtle differences in things necessarily.
I can relate to that. I do feel hear I'm in the same place.
Well, I do hear well enough to produce music,
Yeah.
But the thing is, I have a passion for music. I'm what I consider a musicophile.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't want to hear good music on a bad system, but I'm okay with hearing music that some people, I've had people at shows tell me, well, you can't play Chicago Transit Authority because it's horribly recorded. It sounds horrible. And I'm sorry, to me, that's some of the best rock ever recorded.
Yeah.
It's like, if your system makes it sound horrible, I don't want to listen to your system necessarily,
But that doesn't change the music.
Right,
The music is still the music.
But there are audiophiles who are very particular about what they will listen to, and that specifically is not me. I mean, I don't like, there are things that I consider bad music that I don't want to listen to. It's not like I love everything out there, but I'm very interested in hearing music recreated. And being a musician, I think I probably listen for things somewhat differently than most people, because my comfort zone is hearing things sound like there's a band playing in the room.
Like a live performance.
Right. I've been to, I go to lots of live shows. I love seeing live music, and that visceral experience is something that's very important to me.
In your experience with your system or any system?
With any system.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the systems that float my boat the most are typically very dynamic and live sounding. And I've heard extremely detailed, wonderful systems that do beautiful things spatially. And I'm not going to knock that at all, but it doesn't necessarily that's not what I'm looking for in music. I'm looking
Okay.
for something that, if I close my eyes and hear a saxophone, sounds to me like the sax guy's right there.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get a little bit more into the weeds. What is the methodology for developing upgrades or producing a new cable? And does the team sit down with David Salz and figure out holes that need to be filled, or do ideas evolve more naturally?
Um, Product evolution is really a product of David and David's mind. We certainly, um, there is a team of people that he talks to and asks questions of and things like that, but um, it's not something that we have to suggest certain things to
Okay.
him. As far as product evolution, um, you know, we don't change things unless there is an evolution of design or a material improvement that can be made.
That can be made to the product.
If we introduce a new product that's replacing a previous product, you will hear improvements. I mean, it's got to be something tangible and not
And not
necessarily
just for the
dramatic.
sake of.
Exactly. There's no point in making a new widget if the existing widget is doing the same
Exactly.
thing.
Yeah.
And like I said, that would be a very bad business scheme because you tooling up to make new things is a very expensive
Yeah.
proposition for a business. So
And putting a new name on something
yeah, no,
doesn't seem fair.
right,
I mean,
no.
if there has to be a difference.
With WireWorld, one of the things that I love about selling WireWorld, it's a very easy line to explain. It's a very easy line as a consumer to get to wrap your brain around. The design of a cable has the greatest impact on the sound of a cable. We have one design called DNA Helix, delineated neutralizing array, that's used in every interconnect that we make. Um, it's used in every speaker cable that we make except one, which is a flat geometry that's designed to be able to go under a carpet or behind a baseboard.
Okay.
So by its
So the
nature, it
design is
can't be
different for a purpose.
for a purpose,
Yes.
for one product. And once you
Yeah.
go one step above our entry level, it's a DNA Helix. Now, the way that you make it better is to tweak the design. In the case of speaker cables, we go from 2-conductor to 4-conductor to 8-conductor. That gives us a greater ability to tune the cable for neutrality. And you improve the quality and possibly increase the quantity of the materials. We're one of the few places where we use Ono continuous cast, OCC 7N metallurgy in our cables. And we're one of the few places where you can get a 16 gauge 2-conductor cable called Helicon. There's Helicon OCC. It's the exact same cable. It's pulled through the same tooling, but it's a different quality of metallurgy.
Of metal.
And you can hear the improvements that refinement delivers.
Just on the materials itself.
All that's changing is the insulation is the same. The conductor material is changing.
Yeah.
The same is true of our Solstice speaker cable. The Mini Eclipse is the exact same thing as the Solstice, except it's the OCC 7N version. Equinox is the OCC 7N version of Oasis. So I've got multiple levels of speaker cable where all we're doing is changing one thing, and yet you hear this tremendous increase in performance.
To suit the client's needs, to suit your customer's
and,
budget,
and
whatever
to
the
match,
reason.
Exactly, to match the system, to match the application. As you move through the WireWorld line, like I said, this is why I love it, because it's really easy to explain. It isn't that one thing gets better. We don't make a cable to enhance bass or to tame treble. Everything that we do is designed to be open and neutral and as close to the sound of a bypass when you directly couple components instead of using wire. And with our line, I can honestly say, as you move from model to model, you get closer and closer to the sound of the bypass with every step.
With every step.
And that's why we don't have 30 interconnect cables. That's also why sometimes, an interconnect cable might go from $150 retail to $250 retail.
Yeah.
From $250 retails, it goes to $525 for 1 meter cables, because it I don't want to just offer something different. I want to offer a tangible improvement.
A
So
tangible
when you
improvement,
go
something
from
that's,
one to the
yeah,
next, you absolutely are hearing positive benefits
yeah,
from going through that upgrade.
which is a fantastic way to approach it, I think.
It's, that's our corporate, that's
Ethos.
that's it. That's
Yeah.
our corporate ethos.
Well, how has the technology for manufacturing cables changed over the years, and what can you tell us about some of the current proprietary technologies that WireWorld uses
Well,
besides DNA helix?
I'm not in the trenches. I don't even do product assembly.
Okay.
Even with a background in pro audio, our stuff is rather finicky because there are proprietary materials at use.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't build the product and I don't oversee the factories that assemble the product, but I can tell you that to make a product like ours, you have to have an extremely sophisticated factory. The fact that the nature of the DNA helix, we've got round strands set into flat conductors that are then layered and the whole structure is helically twisted. That gives you all parallel. It's a parallel signal path. There's never individual strands crossing
Yeah.
each other. That eliminates a lot of the problems that occur in conventional cable designs.
Okay.
But it isn't something that just anybody can manufacture. So we have to have extremely high-tech factories working with us.
And WireWorld has taken the steps to take care of those issues at the manufacturing level as opposed to...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, a big part of David's job is, designing the tooling and he dictates the process, exactly what has to happen in what order in order to make the products work right.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
I mean, I imagine there's an outside in,
sure,
but the twisting and the different layers of insulation and the different levels of insulation.
Right. And even just what the blend of the composite materials is that creates Composilex.
Yeah.
Composilex isn't one thing. We're on our third generation and it's
yeah. And David explained a little bit about that and how it eliminates like static feedback within the cables itself.
Triboelectric noise is a property of cables, and our goal by having the quietest insulation materials on the market is to lower the triboelectric noise of the cable. So
good. And that's something that's measurable. I mean, we can see that. Yeah.
It is.
So how does WireWorld differentiate their products from other cable manufacturers in the same market space? It seems like some of these manufacturing steps that WireWorld takes is what differentiates them.
Well, the design, the nature of the products are genuinely what differentiate it. Some of our competitors claim to offer cable that sounds like no cable. This is what WireWorld is really all about. Is we do public demonstrations we call audio cable polygraph tests, where we will physically mount an amplifier on a loudspeaker with no wire. We couple them together, and you can hear what David's goal is. We have a benchmark. There is a target for what the sound should be, and that is no cable. With RCA, we do back-to-back connectors, and it might require maybe a half-inch of wire,
between the two in order to solder them together or whatever.
But it's effectively there's no cable, and we will dock components using RCA adapters. We dock components using XLR adapters. We use HDMI audio de-embedders and make the shortest HDMI jumpers that you can even imagine.
I can't even imagine what that looks like.
They're crazy. But so we start with a benchmark of no cable. And like I was starting to say, some of our competitors, if you read their websites or if you talk to them, they talk about not imparting any sound. We make cables that don't change the sound. That's what we believe the goal of cable should be, is to not change the sound. You spent money on equipment that you wanted because you wanted that equipment. We want you to get the sound of that equipment.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of any other manufacturer that publicly demonstrates the difference between no cable and their cable.
And how their cable impacts the sound.
And the reality is most I don't know for certain that any other manufacturer ever listens to what no cable sounds like.
Yeah.
And I do believe that there are many cable manufacturers that what they want is, they hear an effect of their product. I think it's fairly common for cable manufacturers to try to make a somewhat brighter cable, have a little more air, a little more top end, and that can be done through geometry. Most people are using twisted pair or coaxial designs,
Yeah.
and the ratio of the strands to each other, and
And if I'm
twist
not
rates and
mistaken,
things like that.
that's where David started, was the design of the coaxial twisting,
Yeah,
right?
well, he developed a symmetrical coaxial cable, but
Yeah.
coax was the first design that he was playing with.
Okay.
When he started designing cables in the early 80s. DNA helix is a new phenomenon. We've been using it since 2010. The patent came through in 2013. That was our
Okay.
Series 6 product. It was the first things with DNA helix.
And I remember the transition from Series 6 to Series 8, which is when I started.
7 to 8.
Or 7
Right.
to 8, excuse me.
Right.
When I started in this industry. And I remember it being a very fun time.
Yeah, it's exciting. When
it was very
do
exciting.
that. But like I said, I mean, I believe there are some of our competitors that what they want, like I said, through design, you can make a cable sound a little brighter. What they want is when you put a cable in, you hear a difference. If you hear a difference, you think it's better, especially if you're hearing a little more top end. The problem is if you listen for 2 hours and all of a sudden have tremendous fatigue and you want to turn the stereo down or turn the stereo off.
Or change
the
settings.
And that's where people tend to start shopping around for different cables.
Sure.
Right? If the cable passes the bypass test, you don't need to play with anything else.
Right.
You've dialed it in so that unless somebody had a piece of equipment that they genuinely hated the sound of.
Yeah. And they wanted to change out that piece.
Right.
Yeah.
But we have customers come to us and say, hey, I've got a diamond tweeter with a solid state amp and my system's too bright. What do you have to tame the brightness? And I don't make a cable to tame the brightness, but I can tell you for sure a diamond tweeter with a solid state amp isn't a recipe for too bright. If you're using a cable that was designed
to be bright,
that's
what you're going to get out of it.
All of a sudden, you've got very revealing things that
for
are
sure
quite competent in the high end, and all of a sudden you're getting pummeled with something too bright. So I don't want to say that WireWorld isn't designed to fix those things, because often problems with systems come from a cable that was engineered in a way that we would consider poor engineering. It wouldn't pass a bypass test.
Sure. And it wouldn't meet your level of...
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Well, it seems that innovation of new technologies played a central role to WireWorld's success over the years. Do you feel this is the case, or can it be attributed to something else?
Well, listen, developing new technologies is part of kind of keeping up with trends, right? We knew we had to have Ethernet cables before we had Ethernet cables, but it took significant experimentation for David to come upon the twin axial design and the tight shield technology that makes our Ethernet cables such spectacular performers. Sometimes trends haven't always done us favors. We saw the advent of micro USB being implemented in some very good quality DACs.
Yeah.
And so we jumped on micro USB. Unfortunately, we got to the party too late. And micro USB just isn't the ubiquitous thing that we thought it was going to be. So
I mean, there's a few different connectors that have become ubiquitous, like C and Lightning and things like that, but those are going to change over the next few years.
Lightning certainly is.
Lightning
that would be a bad time to fire up a Lightning.
Yeah. But I mean, there are people out there that are producing cables like that.
Sure.
And there's going to be a demand for them still in the future, but it doesn't mean that it'll be the trendsetter that everybody thinks it will be.
Right. Yeah. But I think more the WireWorld's place in the market is more about offering demonstrable improvement. It doesn't matter. There are a lot of things that may be ancillary. The development of Atmos, all of these emerging technologies that people get wrapped up in,
Yeah.
they matter to us. You're gonna be pulling speaker wire for a whole bunch more speakers than you were pre-Atmos days. But the reality is, our goal is always coming from a two-channel aspect.
Mm-hmm.
HDMI is probably one of the areas that is technologically most challenging. We were the first manufacturer to offer an aftermarket HDMI cable. When we came out with our first HDMI cable, if you had bought a Sony disc player that came with an HDMI cable and you broke it or lost it, you'd contact Sony for a replacement. We were
Yeah.
literally the first people to offer an aftermarket HDMI
Really?
cable.
I had no idea.
We were also the first people to market.
So that was early on.
Yeah, that was very early on. And we were also the first people to market $1,000 HDMI cable. And David literally got death threats because people were incensed that how can you have $1,000 HDMI cable? But this is the thing. If you have a $2,500 Oppo,
Mm-hmm.
what $3,500 player is going to outperform? Probably none. You can get a different player, you might get a different feature set, but are you going to get improved performance? You put our Platinum Starlight HDMI, which back when the Oppo was around, it was a Platinum Starlight 7. Now it's a Platinum Starlight 48.
Yep.
You're going to get an improved picture. You're going to get improved audio. That's all there is to it. And
that's the bottom line. That's what we're looking for, is improvement in the quality of the audio, video, when it applies to
exactly.
Yeah.
So HDMI went through a major overhaul, as it always has, as new features are developed and new specifications need to be adhered to.
Mm-hmm.
The current HDMI cable has to pass 48 gigabits per second. That's a huge bandwidth. The previous HDMI cables had to pass 18 gigabits per second. And so, gearing up to meet the market and to, not only meet the specs, but meet the specs in a way that can actually offer tangible improvements, we're the only HDMI manufacturer that I'm aware of that has a review by an ISF certified expert saying that we had two different cables that actually improved picture quality as well as audio,
which is a very difficult thing in HDMI.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
So moving beyond the technology, how have retail partnerships changed? I think this is more of a question for you as a national sales manager. Mm-hmm. How have the retail partnerships changed, if at all, over the years? And what role do you see for brick and mortar retailers in the future, as locations such as these just aren't as common as they used to be?
Yeah, it's a really sad landscape when you see brick and mortars closing. And the reality is online shopping has done a lot of damage to conventional retail business.
Yeah.
I still see healthy retail markets, but it's usually people who have differentiated themselves in some way.
Okay.
High-end audio, high-end two-channel audio has got to be done at brick and mortar, because nobody's going to buy a $55,000 pair of monoblock amplifiers from an online shop and
expect to get what they want.
Right. And dealers offer a tremendous service to customers in that there's a human that can actually take care of situations. You've got somebody as a first line of tech support. Mm-hmm. You've got somebody that can, in many cases, roll a truck, come out to your place and help you. So, the most successful retailers that I'm aware of, and I'm not talking big box store kind of thing. I mean, the most successful retailers that I see are very customer service centric.
Yeah.
They really take time to listen to. One of the most important parts of a sale is getting across what you want. And it takes a skilled salesman to ask the appropriate questions. You can't just recommend something without knowing something about what somebody wants, what somebody has, what they've had before, what their expectations are, you know, and
what will actually work. And this is a very complicated market.
right,
Very complicated market to understand, even from a sales perspective. Just to understand from a sales perspective is very difficult.
Right. So, you know, I love seeing healthy brick and mortar establishments such as yours, you know, and in really in all of the healthy ones that I can think of, there is a caring human there to cater to the customer's needs. Make sure they get what they are really asking for.
I think the reason that we've done well is that we have the experience.
Right.
Yeah. And DJ, who created our business, I mean, he's been around for 50 years since the inception of a lot of these technologies, and understands it and understands how things impact it. And he's sharing that knowledge with the rest of us, which makes a difference. That makes a huge difference.
Right.
But we also have the online sales as well.
Sure.
Because you can't survive in this world without
the
online sales now, as everybody kind of knows.
Right.
So do you think brick and mortar? It's an essential part, is what I'm hearing. It's an essential part of this industry and this market.
Absolutely. Listen, I'm not going to say that, you know, somebody that buys a cable online to put in their system and listen to it is doing anything wrong.
No,
right?
no, I don't think they are.
I don't think they are.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's a far cry from somebody that says, you know, I want to build a state-of-the-art system. How do I do it?
Yeah.
You know, you can't just read reviews and pick this product because this reviewer liked it, and that product because that reviewer liked it.
And everything at the end is subjective. It's how you listen and how you hear it.
Absolutely. But there is still some level of, there's like a synergy between components.
Yeah.
You know, and so having somebody that understands those synergies is very useful to have in
And I think that's why the approach of having two components attached together without the gap of the cables is a fantastic approach, because that's a starting point that can be measured in almost any way.
Right.
It's a starting point that could be measured against live performance, a starting point that could be measured against a CD quality, whatever.
Yeah.
You know what the level of quality should be where at the starting point, and if the cables that you're making are approaching that level, you can't lose.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, when you think about the future, what do you see on the horizon for cable development in general and for WireWorld specifically?
You know, I think we're going to continue to offer the most popular product types in as high a performance level as we possibly can. I'm not going to pretend to forecast a new cable standard,
state of the art, something that does everything.
There are folks out there working on things.
Yeah.
I can tell you, to me, one of the most amusing things is hearing people talk about wireless, because wireless requires wires. If you're doing a wireless soundbar, it plugs into the wall.
Yeah.
And guess what? WireWorld has a way of making a wireless soundbar sound better. We've got the world's first shielded mini power cord. It makes an audible improvement in something as ubiquitous as a Sonos or a Blue Sound, a smart speaker.
Yeah. But those are designed to remove interference RF frequencies at the source, the power source.
Right. But like I said, that powered speaker plugs into the wall. That wireless speaker still has a wire. So that's the thing that,
because that can have a huge impact. Removing that interference can have a huge impact to the quality of the sound.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Larry, thank you for joining us today to discuss WireWorld and the technology that goes into the production of your cables. It's been a blast to have you guys in the office, and wonderful to sit down and discuss these things with you.
We've thoroughly enjoyed it, and the barbecue.
Good. I'm glad. I enjoyed the barbecue too. Hopefully you couldn't hear my stomach through that. To our viewers, for more information about WireWorld or to purchase your own cables or products, please visit our website at soundapproach.com, and be sure to subscribe for more content from us in the future. Thank you all, and take care.
Thank you.